cost of dollar depreciation, who is paying for U.S. Treasury bonds. It is a story of how the United States built the largest debt pile in human history, more than $36 trillion, and then quietly handed over bills to people who never agreed to pay. By the end of the video, you'll know exactly who is paying the bill, why most of them don't know this is happening, why math is starting to crash. Let's start with the numbers that should stop you from catching a cold. In January 2024, U.S. Treasury bonds exceeded $34 trillion. And in November 2024, less than a year later, U.S. Treasury bonds exceeded $36 trillion. In about 10 months, $2 trillion poured in. Fiscal year 2024 also marks something that has never happened in U.S. history. That is, to repay interest on more than $1 trillion in debt a year. Not the debt itself, just the interest. With that in mind, the U.S. government is now spending more to repay loans than to finance the entire defense budget. The obvious question of who is lending money to the United States is more interesting than most people realize. About $7 trillion of the total debt is so-called government internal debt, which means that the government owes mainly through Social Security trusts and other means. Everything else is held by the public. According to the international capital data of the U.S. Treasury Department, as of mid-2024, foreign investors controlled about $8.5 trillion, of which Japan accounted for about $1.1 trillion, and Britain accounted for about $750 billion. China's current holdings are about 770 billion yuan, which makes the story interesting because their holdings peaked at 1.32 trillion yuan in November 2013. Since then, they have been quietly and steadily selling, which is the transformation we are about to return to. The rest is borne by domestic holders, namely, ordinary Americans holding bonds in the Federal Reserve, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, and retirement accounts. At its peak in 2022, the Federal Reserve alone had more than $5.7 trillion in Treasury bonds, becoming the largest single creditor of the U.S. government. Pause and absorb this, because the federal government's biggest lender is its own central bank. That is where the story is troubling. Because when people talk about who will pay their debts, it is usually the future taxpayers. That is part of it, yes, but the deeper truth is that you are already paying, just not paying any bills. To understand this mechanism, we must go back to the 15th of August, 1971, when Richard Nixon closed the gold window on television and ended the dollar's ability to exchange for gold. The move was supposed to be temporary, but it was not. 2 years later, when the Bretton Woods system completely collapsed and the world shifted to floating exchange rates, the dollar had only trust. Look what has happened since then. The dollar has lost about 87% of its purchasing power since 1971, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. M2 money supply climbed from about $4.6 trillion in 2000 to more than $21 trillion in 2024. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded from about $900 billion in 2008 to a peak of nearly $9 TN in April 2022. Essentially, equivalent to the amount of money it has created. It wasn't a typo. That is a tenfold increase in 14 years. This is the mechanism. This is how the bill is paid. Economists have a term for this: financial repression, which has been widely written by economists like Carmen Reinhart. The idea is that when a government has too much debt to pay in real terms, it will not formally default, but allow inflation to slowly erode the value of those debts. Bondholders can still repay, except for dollars worth much less than the dollars they originally lent. From 2020 to 2022, this dynamic became extreme, and Treasury yields basically turned negative, which means that anyone holding Treasury bonds will certainly lose purchasing power. Bondholders are essentially paying the U.S. government the privilege of borrowing money. According to BLS data, the cumulative inflation rate from January 2020 to December 2024 is about 22%. The question of who paid became a list. First, there are savers and retirees. As anyone holding bonds, savings accounts, or fixed income investments in years with negative real yields has been hit directly, and wealth has quietly shifted from their pockets to the government's balance sheet. The second is the working class. Because when inflation exceeds wage growth, you buy less wages, and the gap is like a tax without a name on your W-2. Third, foreign holders. Because Japan, China, Britain, and all the other countries sitting on a pile of U.S. Treasury bonds watch the real value of these holdings erode year after year. This is actually an answer to one of the most famous words of modern finance. In 1971, Nixon's Treasury Secretary, John Connolly, told a group of European finance ministers, "The dollar is our currency, but that is your problem." 50 years later, it doesn't read like a joke. It reads like a prophecy. Fourth and last, taxpayer debt is not gone in the future, but it is getting bigger and bigger. Interest payments alone now cost more than $1 trillion a year, and projections are rising. That is where the cracks started, because the rest of the world noticed. IMF data show that the share of the US dollar in global foreign exchange reserves has fallen from about 72% in 2000 to about 58% at the end of 2024. Not a crash, but the trend is obvious. World Gold Council data show that global central banks bought more than 1,000 tons of gold in 2023 and 2024, and are quietly and steadily diversifying. Credit rating agencies have also become popular. In August 2011, S&P became the first company to downgrade the AAA rating of the United States to AAI. Fitch did the same thing on the 1st of August 2023. In November 2023, Moody lowered the U.S. debt outlook to negative. Each landed like an alarm bell. The people who run the system don't even hide. On the 4th of February 2024, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell delivered a 60-minute speech, saying bluntly that the federal government is on an unsustainable fiscal path. This is not a Twitter post by hedge fund managers, but a speech by the central bank governor on state television. Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, one of the world's largest hedge funds, has described it for years as late in the classic big debt cycle, and Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase has repeatedly warned that the United States is heading toward a fiscal cliff. There is another side to this argument, and it deserves a fair hearing. Some economists at Stephanie Kelton and the School of Modern Monetary Theory argue that the panic is overblown, pointing out that the United States borrows in its own currency and cannot be forced to default. Historically, the ratio of debt to GDP has declined under the combined effect of economic growth and moderate inflation. The Atlantic Council's Dollar Dominance Monitor regularly notes that despite all the de-dollarization talks, no other currency, the renminbi, the euro, is close to replacing the dollar in global trade. Foreign exchange markets, or the SWIFT system, this debate is real. But pay attention to some of the things behind it, because even optimistic scenarios rely on moderate inflation to work. This means that even at the best of times, people are paying through weak dollars. And the only question is how fast and how much. That brings us back to the original question. Who paid for the dollar's decline? And who actually financed $36 trillion in debt? The answer is almost everyone. Treasury holders pay through negative real returns. Working class workers through inflation, foreign governments through eroded reserves, retirees through declining purchasing power, and grandchildren through more than $1 trillion a year in compound interest debt. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, a former French finance minister, once called it America's exorbitant privilege. The ability to borrow in the currency the world needs. That privilege has been America's biggest financial weapon for 50 years, but its costs are spreading among billions of people who have never registered to pay. Debt has not shrunk. Interest rates have not slowed, and the world is slowly but clearly looking for exports. Whether this is soft adjustment or hard liquidation is literally a $1 trillion question. If you find it useful, click subscribe, because we follow the story. And if the numbers tell you anything, we're not close. We are in the middle.